intelligibility, and you mentioned that. Filipinos would not care about grammar as long as the message is there. You mentioned about the casual speech, and yes, Duterte speaks the language of the common people. Number three, you mentioned about the taboos. But I think that one thing that probably you missed, if perhaps, is the theory of Sapir-Whorf hypotheses. For example, if we want to learn one language, people would say you're learning a new soul. Because if we learn a new language, there is a kind of identity. So it means that language and culture co-evolve. That's why I believe Rudy Duterte speaks 4 languages: Cebuano, English, Tagalog, or Maranao. It means that Duterte has also 4 souls. So it means when every time he speaks, he represents himself. There is a shift from one language to another, one culture to another, one cognition to another. That's why every day he speaks, the everyday discourses, not the specialized vocabulary. So that's one thing. And you mentioned about the use of language actually defines us. But culture and language plus cognition, they really co-evolve. I am a Cebuano. I speak Cebuano. I come from Bohol. That's why every time Duterte speaks, I know that he is speaking on behalf of his culture. Thank you.
When I say language defines us and language is identity, it of course includes our culture.
Thank you. I wonder, Ms. Cunanan, if you could find out for us, to what extent does the President manage the English language? The question I'm raising is this. He's supposed to know 4 languages. Fine. But it could be that while he's talking in Cebuano, he's thinking in Cebuano, then he translates his thinking in Cebuano into English in a literal way, and it turns out not to be exactly the correct way. Doesn't this play a role in I am concerned because I'm a diplomat. And we don't have to learn language the way students go to school to learn language. Being a diplomat, it goes in the process of growing up and becoming a diplomat, finding nuances, finding correct words, finding appropriate phrases, etc., etc., so that we can find what we say a win-win game and not a zero-sum game. Now, the President is the statesperson. He carries the representation of the Filipino nation. His language is very significant internationally. I have to say that this exercise the whole morning has been to find justifications that he is correct in his language and therefore we have to forgive him. Fine, that's a good exercise because I like the President's frankness, his objectives. I think it's very good for the Filipino people. But his language is what I would say Waterloo. His language. Maybe not in Cebuano, now in Maguindanao language or whatever local dialects that he knows. But when it comes to the English language, because we have to deal with the international community, he's faltering. It's really very weak, you know. And I don't want us, not least of all my president, the Republic of the Philippines, to commit a faux pas with the rest of the leaders of the world. I don't want him to be insulted again the way Obama insulted him. And that was a precise way of dealing with language. What did he say to President Duterte? There are my people who will talk to you. That was an insult. See? What I'm trying to say is, I love this president. I like what he wants to accomplish for the Filipino people. Let us stop trying to help him by justifying his behavior. Can we find way and means of helping him overcome his shortcomings? Because there's such a thing that we know as universal, decent, civilized behavior. And that's what we have to help him get into his inner self. Thank you.
Yeah. I'm not speaking for the president. I'm not justifying his speech styles or his actions. I was just describing his speech styles and why certain people react this way and certain people react the other way. Is Secretary Abella still around? I think Secretary Abella is the more, I don't know, more appropriate person to tell him about this. But in terms of English, I think he is actually more comfortable using English than Filipino, right? Even during the campaign period, he would normally use English in the debates rather than Filipino. How can I answer that question? Again, it maybe it depends on his intentions. At least the data I looked are when he talked to a local audience. But I don't know if he realizes this or not, that he's not only talking to the local audience, that he's actually addressing a larger, or he's not addressing a larger audience, but a larger audience is listening to him. Yeah. The whole world, right? The whole world is actually listening to him.
Saan si Nena? Di kita. Kita makita kasi rin. Nena, hindi na ako magsasalita dahil sinabi mo na gusto kong sabihin.
To add, in linguistics, we just describe the language because it's not our role to prescribe language use. And I guess there are, like, writers can prescribe some language use. Sir?
Magsasalita pa ba ako?
Yes, of course.
Okay. My most important justification for being with you this morning is because I'll be 92 next month. Yeah. I've been around when Quezon was president and chasing all the pretty girls in Manila. So, I've witnessed 15 presidents. Some of them I knew very well to be on first name basis when I talked with them. And I can tell you straight that the best president we ever had was Magsaysay. Yeah. And the worst was Marcos. Having this background, I can tell you that what destroyed not only most of our presidents, but including so many of our leaders, even those who are not in government, was what Bong Osorio mentioned kanina, hubris, yabang, ang yabang natin talaga. No, when Cory Aquino said, I will not welcome unsolicited advice, yabang yun. Yabang yun. Marcos was mayabang just simply because he was able to get out of a death sentence when he was in college. He thought he could get out of all troubles that he faced. Noynoy Aquino was mayamang. He also refused to follow advice from even his most brilliant advisor. I will not talk about language kasi nasabi na lahat ni Professor Cunanan. But one thing that you must be aware of is that as a writer, words are my tools. And therefore, I'm faithful in the use of words, not only for what they stand for, but most of all, words like truth, duty, patriotism. To me, these are very meaningful words. The reason I like Duterte, gaya din ni Nena, sabi niya kanina, because I know he is a patriot. I know he cares for this country and its people. I know that. I haven't met him, but I can sense that. Another thing which he has done is to challenge not only the Catholic Church, but the oligarchy, which no politician has publicly tried to do. And to me, the most important thing that he has done really, which many of us do not recognize as yet, is that he has launched a revolution. Take note, he has launched a revolution. And the drug war that he is waging is just a large portion of it. And thank God that he launched it too, because now we can see how high corruption has gone in government. Thank God he did it before we become a narco state. The other thing that I hope will come out of his term is his effort to have new relationships with other countries, like China, like Russia. But he should never deny the importance of our relationship with our old allies like the United States. Nena, you're a diplomat, and I hope you don't mind my saying this, you know. I am digressing, I hope you don't mind, because it's part of the, what they call this, it's part of the Duterte program. Our problem with the United States has been such that we regard the United States as one complete entity. I do not think that is the right way for us to deal with the United States. We should be able to compartmentalize our relationship with the United States. Diplomacy, separate yan. And we had a lousy Secretary of Foreign Affairs under the last administration who was so pro-American, he had no room for maneuver. So it's all right that we develop a relationship with the other countries. But going back to America, and Nena, you're a diplomat, I hope you agree with me, we should compartmentalize our relationship with the United States and attack them in areas where they are vulnerable. Military aid, for instance. Bakit po konting binibigay sa atin? You know, Israel gets 10 million a year. Tayo, I think, 8 million lang. Okay? And we have been steadfast allies of the United States for so long. Okay? That's one area where our diplomats can do something. Cultural relations, you know, hiwalay yan. The cultural influence of the United States in this country is stifling. You know. And I'm saying this as a writer. Look at our bookshops. There's so much American junk in them. I mean, that's a commercial for Solidarity Bookshop. That's, why should graduate students from this country go to Cornell to take up a PhD on the Ifugaos? Huh? If we send scholars to the United States at all, they should take up the sciences, none of the humanities subjects. Well, so much for that. But back to Mr. Duterte. Tama-tama yung sinabi si Mrs. Manalo because he's a career diplomat. What Mr. Duterte should do is just simply, yung sinabi ko kanina kay Secretary Abella, just shut his mouth. Huwag na siya magsalita. You know, just do his thing. You know. Because, first, he has, up to now, he has the widespread approval of most Filipinos. And the reason is quite simple. Because people can walk safely now, even in Manila, and in so many places, there's a sense of security. But how long will that last? So that in the end, he has to remember that his priority is to create more jobs for Filipinos, to get that kind of assistance from anyone, from China, from Russia, from the United States, kahit sino, as long as he creates more jobs for Filipinos. But going back to what Bong Osorio said kanina, he does not realize that his greatest enemy is his own self, his mouth. Because he is so damn conceited, he thinks he knows all the answers. And this is what differentiates him from our greatest president. Ramon Magsaysay knew his shortcomings. He was humble enough to know his faults. So he surrounded himself with the best minds that were available in his time. And another thing, when Magsaysay committed a mistake, he reversed himself immediately. If Duterte can have the continued support of the people and the loyalty of the police and the armed forces, he does not have to declare martial law because the people will follow him. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jose. So maybe I can raise some questions at this point. You said he should shut up. So that means less talk, more work.
Yeah.
Less talk, more work. And can he still change? He continues to talk, but can he change his language? Can he change his linguistics?
He has more than 2,000 days to do that.
So you think it's possible? Ma'am, is it possible for him to change?
It's possible, but does he want to change? What I see from the president is that if he's decided on something, he will do it. And I also agree with the national artist that he should refrain from speaking to the public a lot.
Sorry?
From speaking to the public a lot.
So less talk also.
Less talk also.
Okay,
Or
so yes, ma'am. Please introduce yourself.
Yes, good morning. I'm Christina from UST. Would like to appreciate what you have mentioned and clarified, Ma'am Kunanan, earlier, because as a member of the education and a member of the society and a member of the community, I feel that whenever our president speaks something, of course, he aims to help the people, but most often he is misunderstood. Now, while listening to your clarification and speech earlier, I came to realize that why not educate the people? So if people are expecting, there's a gap, as you have mentioned earlier, from what we expect out of the president and the norms that we have to accept. Now, if people can only, especially the media, I observe po kasi whenever he speak, people or the media people will have this misunderstanding and they misinterpret po yung mga sinasabi niya. Now, if only they are educated enough to understand and probably understand the norms, will it make a difference, ma'am?
After Professor Cunanan answers that, I'll ask some media people here, do you really misunderstand the president? Or anybody from media can answer that after Professor Cunanan?
I think generally we can find two groups of audiences. One group expects certain things from him, and then the other group just accepts his speech as they are. Again, because they can relate to him. When you talk about educating the public, I don't know. The question here is, should we adjust to him? But I don't know if this is the problem, but the greater majority just wants to accept him. Again, I guess most of the people who are very critical of the way he speaks are the people in this room who are into communication, studies, language studies, who are into foreign relations, diplomacy. But it's very difficult for me to answer the question because I don't really know what the president's intentions are. If his intention is to catch the attention of the public, he would continue using his speech style. Because people respond to him very positively. People laugh. People applaud him. But if his intention is to have a diplomatic relation to a lot of people, that's where the change has to come, I think.
Okay, so any comment? My question to my colleagues from media, do we often misunderstand the president? Yes, Ma'am Ellen.
I'm Ellen Tordesillas. I write a column for Malaya, and I'm a trustee of Vera Files. I really have to disagree with you when you say that media misunderstands him. Well, I speak for myself and and there are many members of media who are very responsible. We really try to be as accurate as we are in reporting what he says, and if by quoting him directly, he puts himself in trouble, that's not our problem. I disagree with what with his spokesman saying that we have to be creative in reporting about his words. No, our job is to relay to the public what he said. We are not interpreters. We will not interpret what he says. It's a job of his officials to interpret, not media. You know, my God, I'll give you an example. When he was asked by a reporter if he can show his medical report, because it is the right of the public to know the health condition of the Philippines, you know what his answer was? I'll quote him exactly. He said, "What if I ask you how the vagina of your wife smells?" That's his answer. how, as a reporter, how do I report that? Right? So I will report it as is. I will not interpret it. Now, if the public is shocked by that, maybe that's what he wants. It's not for us to prevent the public from being shocked. We report. So I really disagree when you say that we in media misreport him or misinterprets him.
Other comments? Yes, ma'am.
About misunderstanding, if a misunderstanding happens, I think it's not a one-sided process, or the fault is not on one side. There may be something wrong in how you deliver the message. There may be something wrong in how the audience received your message. In communication, we always say that once you blurt out something, you cannot take it back. And that message can have a different interpretation for different people. So,
Professor, earlier you mentioned about the standards. It seems that our language standards is evolving. After 6 years of Duterte presidency, do you see a new language or linguistic standards for the Philippines? Standards such as we now become more tolerable with swearing and curse words and we use them more often? Or hindi naman?
when I talk about being aware of the different language varieties, it can be both positive and negative. You are aware of the different varieties of Filipino, accept that Cebuanos would speak Filipino a certain way, Ilocanos would speak Filipino a certain way. It can boost your confidence that, oh, I can speak the way I speak, right? For the national language, it's a very good development, actually. But in the same way, they can use the same argument to say that the president swears, why can't I? So that's the negative side of it, because the president is a role model for a lot of people. So there. I don't know if it's a new standard, but we definitely will see some changes in Filipino as we know it.
Okay, so that's a caution or... Ma'am, Sister Consolata.
I'm Sister Consolata of the Daughters of St. Paul, Pauline's Institute of Communication. President Duterte uses cuss words not a few times in public. It makes me wonder, what is the effect of these cuss words to our children who watch television? Because not so long later, his picture will be in every classroom of all the schools. And he will be presented by the teacher to the students, our leader, our model. And yet they hear him use cuss words.
I think it would be unfair to Professor Conanan. Maybe somebody call a friend or somebody helpline who can
Again,
answer that question. Dr. Maslog, you may want to answer that question. Did I put you on the spot? What would be the effect on our children? No? Yung classroom
again,
children, you're seated and then you see the president, yung mamang nagmumura. Yes,
Again,
ma'am.
as a role model for children, or as a president in the highest position in the Philippines, it can have that effect on children. Children can say, the president swears in front of the public, why can't I? It can really be an effect on children.
Okay.
Not only children,
I have
everyone actually.
room for 2 more questions. Yes, Ma'am Linda from Miriam. And who's next after Professor Linda? Let's see.
Hello, Mon. Since you asked for help or assistance, so in response to Sister's query, there are theories which will tell us that indeed, okay, what you see in television or in media will really influence how you think and how you behave. Yan po ay napatunayan na. So in other words, so I am already answering Sister, so we will have a culture of what? children using cuss words, and they would think that it's all right to imitate. So I think that is a challenge to all of us. I am a communication teacher for 25 years,